The Queen's secret diary, the pages the palace tried to destroy. What if the greatest secret in British royal history was never hidden inside a vault but inside a diary? A diary so dangerous that after the Queen's death trusted palace officials tried to destroy every single page. But they failed. Because a few pages survived. And what was written on those pages could have changed the future of the British crown forever. It was the winter of 1898. A freezing wind swept across Buckingham Palace while snow covered the gardens outside. The palace looked peaceful, but behind its walls fear was growing every single day. For many months the Queen followed the same mysterious routine. Every evening after dinner she sent every servant away. She locked herself inside a small private study and ordered that nobody disturb her until morning. Not even the highest-ranking palace officials were allowed to enter. Only one elderly lady-in-waiting was permitted to bring a candle, fresh ink, and a small leather diary with the royal crest. The Queen never allowed anyone to touch that diary. She wrote for hours in complete silence. Some nights she smiled while writing. Other nights tears slowly fell onto the pages. Servants standing outside the room sometimes heard her quietly whisper, "One day the truth will finally be known." Nobody understood what those words really meant. Rumors quickly spread throughout the palace. Some believed she was writing about secret meetings. Others believed she was recording hidden royal scandals. A few even whispered that the diary contained a secret powerful enough to destroy the future of the British monarchy. Every morning before leaving the room, the Queen carefully placed the diary inside a heavy iron box hidden beneath her writing desk. The only key remained around her neck at all times. She trusted nobody. Not even the people closest to her. Then one cold morning everything changed. The Queen's health suddenly became worse. Doctors arrived from across the country. The palace became quieter than ever before. Only a few days later the palace bells began to ring. The Queen had died. Thousands of people gathered outside Buckingham Palace to mourn their beloved Queen. But while the nation was grieving, something very different was happening inside the palace. Late that night 4 senior palace officials secretly entered the Queen's private study. They locked every door closed. They opened the iron box. Inside was the diary. One official slowly opened the first page. Within seconds the color disappeared from his face. Without saying a single word, they carried the diary to the fireplace. One page after another disappeared into the flames. By sunrise, almost every page had turned to ashes. Almost every page. Because beneath a loose wooden floorboard hidden under the Queen's desk several pages had survived. And before another sunset someone would find them. Someone who was never supposed to know the truth. The next morning a young palace librarian entered the Queen's private study. His job was simple. He had been ordered to remove the remaining books and prepare the room to be sealed forever. The room felt different. The fire in the fireplace had gone cold, but the smell of burnt paper still filled the air. Every shelf had been cleaned. Every drawer had been emptied. It looked as if someone had carefully removed every trace of the Queen's private life. As the librarian walked across the wooden floor, he suddenly heard a strange hollow sound beneath his feet. He stopped. He slowly knelt down and examined the floorboards. One board looked slightly different from the others. Its edge was loose. With shaking hands, he carefully lifted it. Hidden beneath the floor was a small cloth package covered in dust. His heart began to race. He carefully opened the bundle. Inside were 12 handwritten pages. Each page carried the royal seal. There was no doubt. These pages had come from the Queen's secret diary. He looked around the room to make sure nobody was watching. Then he began to read. The first page described a secret meeting that had never appeared in any official record. The second page mentioned a promise made inside the palace many years earlier. The third page spoke about a child whose name had been erased from history. The librarian's hands began to shake. He could hardly believe what he was reading. Every page revealed another hidden truth. Every sentence raised even more questions. Then he reached the final page. The handwriting looked weaker, as if the Queen had written it during her final days. The last sentence made his blood run cold. The rightful future of the crown has been hidden from the world for many years. The librarian quickly folded the pages and placed them inside his coat. At that very moment, heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. Someone was coming. The study door slowly began to open. The librarian held his breath. Standing in the doorway was the same senior palace official who had burned the diary the night before. He looked directly into the librarian's eyes. Then he quietly said, "Give me the pages. I know you found them." The young librarian stood completely still. His heart was beating faster than ever before. The senior palace official slowly walked into the room and closed the door behind him. The room became silent. The official looked directly at the librarian's coat where the hidden pages were concealed. He calmly said, "Those pages do not belong to you." The librarian stepped back but refused to hand them over. He asked one simple question. "Why did you burn the Queen's diary?" The official remained silent for several moments. Then he slowly answered, "Because some truths are more dangerous than lies." The librarian looked down at the pages in his hands. He knew they contained something that powerful people wanted to keep hidden forever. Without another word, he suddenly ran toward the hallway. His footsteps echoed through the empty palace corridors. Behind him, the official shouted for the palace guards. Within seconds, guards began searching every hallway, every staircase, and every room. The librarian escaped through a forgotten passage that only old palace workers still remembered. He finally reached an abandoned library hidden deep inside the palace. The room had been locked for many years. Dust covered every shelf. Old royal records filled the walls from floor to ceiling. He placed the diary pages on a wooden table and continued reading. One page described a secret ceremony held late at night. Another page revealed that only a handful of trusted people had witnessed what really happened. Then he found a folded letter hidden between two diary pages. The paper had become yellow with age. The Queen herself had written every word. The letter said that if these pages were ever discovered, the reader must never trust anyone inside the palace. Not every servant was loyal. Not every minister served the crown. Some served only themselves. At the bottom of the letter, the Queen had drawn a small map leading to a place simply called the 7th room. No location was written. No explanation was given. Only one final sentence appeared beneath the map. "The final truth is waiting where no one has searched for generations." The librarian carefully folded the map and hid it inside his pocket. He finally understood that the diary was only the beginning. The greatest royal secret was still hidden somewhere inside the palace. And someone else was already searching for it. The librarian left the abandoned library before sunrise. The map remained hidden inside his pocket. Every corridor of the palace felt darker than before. He knew someone was following him. Each step echoed through the silent halls. He carefully studied the old map again. It showed a forgotten staircase behind a large stone wall that no longer appeared on modern palace plans. After several hours of searching, he finally found the place. The wall looked ordinary, but one loose stone moved when he pressed it. A narrow passage slowly opened before him. Cold air rushed from the darkness. He picked up a lantern and walked inside. The passage had remained untouched for generations. Dust covered every step. Spider webs hung from the ceiling. At the end of the passage stood an old wooden door. Above the door was a faded number. 7. The librarian slowly pushed the door open. Inside was a small hidden room. Old furniture stood exactly where it had been left many years before. A royal portrait rested against the wall. A silver crown sat inside a glass case covered with dust. On a wooden table lay another leather diary. Beside it was a sealed envelope carrying the Queen's royal seal. His hands trembled as he opened the letter. The Queen had written that if anyone was reading these words, then the first diary had already been destroyed. She wrote that the real truth had never been placed inside the first diary. It had always been hidden inside this room. The first diary had only been created to protect the second one. The librarian looked at the second diary with disbelief. Before he could open it, a loud sound echoed through the hidden passage. Footsteps were coming closer. Several lanterns lit the darkness. The palace officials had found the secret passage. The librarian quickly picked up the second diary. There was only one way out. But someone was already standing there waiting for him. The librarian stopped where he stood. The hidden diary was tightly held in his hands. The palace officials slowly entered the 7th room. Their leader stepped forward and quietly spoke. "You have already seen too much. Give us the diary and this will all end today." The librarian looked around the room. There was no escape. But he remembered the Queen's final words. The truth must never disappear. He opened the 2nd diary. Inside were the Queen's final handwritten pages. She revealed that many years earlier a secret decision had been made inside the palace. A decision that changed the future of the British Crown forever. Only a small group of powerful officials knew the complete truth. They promised never to allow the public to discover what had happened. For decades they protected that secret. Every document was hidden. Every witness was silenced. Every record was locked away. The Queen wrote that history belongs to the people, not to those who rewrite it. She believed that one day someone honest would discover the diary and reveal the truth. The librarian closed the diary. He understood why the first diary had been burned. It had been created to distract everyone from the real diary hidden inside the 7th room. The palace officials moved closer. But before they could take another step, loud voices echoed from outside. Several journalists had arrived at the palace gates after receiving an anonymous package. Inside the package were copies of the surviving diary pages. The secret could no longer be hidden. The officials looked at each other in complete silence. They knew everything had changed. The librarian slowly walked out of the 7th room carrying the original diary. For the first time in many years, the truth was no longer locked behind palace walls. Some people believed every word. Others called it only a legend. But one question still remains. If the Queen wanted the truth to be known, who secretly delivered the copied pages to the journalists before anyone else found them? Perhaps that mystery is still waiting to be discovered.